"He is dying, Dr. Watson," said Sherlock Holmes' landlady. "He would not let me get a doctor." "With your leave or without it, Mr. Holmes, I am going for a doctor," said I. I was horrified. "I can't tell you, Dr. Watson. He has been working on a case in an alley near the river, and he has brought this illness back with him. Neither food nor drink has passed his lips ever since." Holmes was indeed a sad spectacle. His eyes had the brightness of fever. His voice was croaking. "My dear fellow," I cried, approaching him, "stand back, stand right back," he ordered sharply. "But why?" "Because it's my desire. Is that not enough? It's for your own sake, Watson," he croaked. "For my sake?" "I know what the matter is with me. It is a disease from Sumatra, a thing we know little about. One thing is certain: it is deadly, and it is horrible, contagious." "Holmes," said I, "you are not yourself. A sick man is like a child, so I will treat you." "You mean well, Watson," groaned the sick man. "But shall I demonstrate your ignorance? What do you know on Tapanuli fever or the Black Formosa corruption?" "Never heard of either." "There are many strange diseases in the East, Watson. You can do nothing." "Possibly not," I replied. "But Dr. Enstry, who is the greatest living authority on tropical disease, is now in London. I am going this instant to fetch him." Never had I such a shock. In an instant, leaping up like a tiger, the dying man had interrupted me. I heard the sharp snap of a twisted key. The next moment he had struggled back to his bed, completely exhausted. "You won't take the key from me by force, Watson. Here you are, and here you will stay unless I wish. Otherwise, it is 4 o'clock. At 6 you can go." I seem to have no choice. Not at all. "Now, Watson, there is one another condition I would make. You will seek help not from the man you mentioned, but from the one I choose." "By all means." "At 6, Watson, we resume our conversation." Unable to settle down, I walked slowly around the room, examining the pictures of the celebrated criminals with which every wall was adorned. Finally, I came to the mantelpiece in the midst of a jumble of objects, with a small black and white ivory box with a sliding lid. I stretched out my hand to examine it more closely. It was a dreadful cry that he gave. "Put it down! Down this instant, Watson!" His head sank back upon the pillow, and he gave a sigh of relief as he kept the box back upon the mantelpiece. "Thank you. That is excellent. Now you have the kindness to place some letters and papers upon the table within my reach. This is a sugar stone over there. kindly raise that small ivory box with its assistance. Place it here among the papers. You can go and fetch Mr. Cobblestone Smith of 13 Lower Baker Street. Never heard of this name, said I. Watson, it may surprise you to know that the man who is best versed in this disease is not a medical man, but a planter. Mr. Smith is a well-known resident of Sumatra, now visiting London. If you could persuade him to come here and give us the benefit of his unique experience of this disease, the investigation which has been his dearest hobby, I can doubt that he could help me. There is no good feeling between us. His nephew, Watson, the boy died in a horrible way. I heard suspicious of the foul play and allowed him to stay. He has a grudge against me. You will soften him, Watson. I will bring him in a cab, if I have to carry him down to it. You will do no such thing. You will persuade him to come, and then return before him. Make any excuse so as not to come with him. Don't forget, Watson. Don't fail him. He lay back upon the bed, murmuring in a confused way about the oceans and fishes. I left him babbling like a child and descended down the steps. As I stood whistling for a cab, a man came to me through the fog. "How is Mr. Holmes, sir?" he asked. It was an old acquaintance, Inspector Morton of Scotland Yard. "He is very ill," I answered. I was surprised to see a light smile upon his face. However, before I could think more about it, the cab drove up. I left him. The house at the Lower Baker Street had old-fashioned iron railings, a massive folding door, shining brass works. A butler appeared and took my car. "Parson, what does he want?" "Well, I won't see him." Through the half door open, I heard his high, penetrating voice. Before the butler could deliver his message, I pushed past him and went into the room. With a shrill cry of anger, man rose from his reclining chair beside the fire. "What is this?" he cried in a high, screaming voice. I am sorry," said I, "but the matter cannot be delayed. Mr. Sherlock Holmes." The mention of my friend's name had an extraordinary effect upon the little man. The look of anger passed in an instant from his face. "Have you come from Holmes?" he asked. "He is desperately ill. He is dying. That's why I've come." The man turned to his chair, and he did so. I caught a glimpse of his face in the mirror over the mantelpiece. I could see half shown that it had set in a malicious and hateful smile. Yet he turned to me an instant later with a genuine concern upon his features. "I know Mr. Holmes through some business dealings, but I have every respect for his talent and his character. He thought you were the only man in London who could help him because of his knowledge of Eastern disease." Mr. Cobblestone Smith smiled pleasantly and picked up his cat. "I will come with you at once." I remembered Holmes' orders. "I have another appointment," said I. "Very good. I will go along. You can rely on my being there within half an hour at most." It was with a sinking heart that I re-entered Holmes' bedroom. For all I knew, the worst might have happened in my absence. To my relief, he had improved greatly in the interval. "Well, did you see him, Watson?" "Yes, he is coming." "Admirable, Watson, admirable. Now you must disappear from the scene. This is just a room enough behind the head of my bed." "My dear Holmes!" I exclaimed. "I fear there is no alternative, Watson. The room does not offer any other place of concealment. And don't budge, whatever happens. Just listen all your tears." Then in an instant his sudden burst of strength dissipated, and he drifted into a low bag of murmurings of a semi-delirious man. From my hiding place I could hear the opening and closing of the door of the bedroom. I could imagine our visitor standing up the bed and looking at the sufferer. At last the strange hush was broken. "Holmes!" he cried. "Holmes, can you hear me?" "Is that you, Smith?" Holmes whispered. "It is very noble of you to have come." Our visitor sniggered. "Do you know what is the matter with you?" "The same," said Holmes. "I feel very ill, Smith." "Well, I shouldn't be surprised, Holmes. Poor Victor was a dead man on the fourth day. It has certainly, as you said, very surprising that he had been contracted and out of the way Asiatic disease in the heart of London. Singular coincidence, Holmes. Very smart of you to notice it, but rather unkind to suggest that it was a cause and the effect." "I knew that you did it." "Oh, you did you? Well, you couldn't prove it anyhow." Holmes groaned. "Do what you can do for me. Let bygones be bygones. Only cure me, and I will forget it." "Forget what?" "Well, about Victor Savag's death. You as good as admitted just now that you have done it." "You can forget it or to remember it just as you like. It matters nothing to me that you should know that how my nephew died. It's not him we're talking about, it's you." Yes, I'm too ill to think." "Listen, Holmes." There was a sound as if he was shaking the dying man. "Do you remember a box and an ivory box? It came by post on Wednesday. You opened it, do you remember?" Yes, I opened it. There was a soft spring inside. Some joke." "It was no joke. It was I who sent it." "The spring, it drew blood. This box is that one." "The very one?" "And it may well leave the room in my pocket. There he goes, the last shred of evidence. But you have the truth now, Holmes, that you can die with the knowledge that I killed you." Holmes' voice had sunk to an almost inaudible whisper. "What is that?" said Smith. "Turn up the gas." "Is there any service that I can do for you, my friend?" "A match to light a candle." I nearly called out in my joy and excitement. Holmes was speaking in my voice. There was a long pause, and I felt that Calverton Smith was standing in silent amazement, looking down at my companion. "What's the meaning of this?" he said at last in a dry, harsh tone. "The best way of successfully acting as a part is to be," said Holmes. "I give you my word that for 3 days I have tasted neither food nor drink. Hello, do I hear the step of a friend?" There were footsteps outside. The door opened and the Inspector Morton appeared. "All in the order, and this is your man," said Holmes. The officer said, "I arrest you on the charge of the murder of one Victor Savage." "And you might add the attempted murder of one Sherlock Holmes," remarked my friend with a chuckle. "Mr. Smith was good enough to give our signal by turning off the gas. By the way, the prisoner has a small box in his right-hand pocket of his coat which might play a part in the trial." "Wow, that's great." "A nice chap," I cried, with a high-snarling voice. "He asked me to come away from to cure him. Now he will pretend, no doubt, that I have said anything which he had made." "Good heavens," said Holmes. "I had totally forgotten him. My dear Watson, I owe you 1,000 apologies. To think that I should have overlooked you. I need not introduce you to Mr. Smith, since you have met earlier in the evening." Officer Morton took Mr. Smith to the police station. As Holmes sat down with a tired look, I asked him how he had transformed his appearance so dramatically. 3 days of absolute fast could not improve one's beauty, Watson. When we have finished at the police station, I think that something nutritious at Simpson's restaurant would not be out of place.